All right, so here we are. We're back. Today we're talking about solving the problem with lives and score and health. So we're going to look at lives specifically today. Let's look where we left our game off last time. See what it can do. So I get this error. We'll get that error once we get our screen. Hopefully get that error resolved shortly. I think it's just a setting. But you can see that we've got the pop and catch working correctly. And then, almost. And then you can see we only have one room, so it restarts the room. Every time it restarts the room, it does this. It's very annoying. And then some snarky comment when you lose. Okay, so then it restarts the game. So that's where we are. But what we're not doing is we're not keeping track of lives. So if I could get the room to quiet down just a bit. There's a lot of talking. All right, so we're looking at keeping track of lives. So one way we could do that is what you try to do is look for something that there's only one of, because you only want to have one thing controlling lives. And fortunately, we do have a controller in the room, so we could use that. So why don't we do that? So we go to the controller then, and we already have a create event in the controller. So we might as well go in there and see and just set the lives. Now we did randomize it so that we get a different pattern each time. But then we also want to set the score, or no, the lives too. Yeah, I keep saying score, but the lives is what we want to look at. Here's all the things related to lives. Okay, there's set life, there's if lives, there's some drawing things for drawing lives, and then all three of them together. This is get lives, I guess. You can get that too. So what we want to do is set. And typically when you start most arcade games, you say 3 lives. Don't say relative here, because if you do, it tries to add to lives, and lives doesn't exist yet, and then it crashes. So don't do that. But you want to start with 3 lives. Now, we've talked about this before, but do you actually get 3 lives? And the answer is no. You actually have 4 lives, right? You have the life you currently have, and then you have 3 more lives. So you actually have 4 lives, even though it says you have 3. I don't know. A lot of people have never noticed that in games, that you have 4 lives. They say, have 3 lives, 3 extra lives. It's true. I've never noticed it until I started thinking about it. And then you actually have 4 lives. You only live 4 times, I guess. So so we got our life set. Now we have to show it, right? We got to say, okay, how do we show lives? Typically, when you show lives, you show life images, right? Little icons on the top. So we need to create a little icon we're going to use for our lives. So that would be sprites. Now, a lot of times people just use little hearts and things. But there's an icon we can use in here that might work. So if you create a new sprite, this is for our lives. We don't want an animated sprite, but maybe a picture of Pop that doesn't animate. Well, fortunately, there's one out there in our little folder. So if we say import, let me share the screen with everyone too. So I'm sharing screens. Oops, stop sharing screens. It makes funny noises when you do that. Okay. Hey, now you can see my screen. Now, this screen you can resize to fit off to the side. If you have trouble seeing it, if you're in the corners or have bad eyesight in the back row, then this helps a little bit. So what do we want to call this? We'll just call it SPR_life. Okay? So that's our life image. We've done this before in the maze game, but we're going to try it here again. And then we'll say import. And we don't want to use Pop because that's animated. We want to use this one, Reef. It's an icon file actually, but it's used typically to make a little icon. So if it goes on your desktop, it looks like Pop. So choose that one. It doesn't have any frames. It's just a single picture, but it's the same size. And we're going to use that as our life image. It's already transparent for some reason. Surprised by that. Okay. So we're going to use that as our life picture. Okay, so who draws that? Well, our lives are being stored on our controller, because lives are now an instance variable. So we go to our controller, and in our create event then, we've set lives to 3, but we want to show lives every time we draw the controller. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, wait a second. The controller doesn't have a sprite. You don't draw anything. It still has a draw event, though. And since lives lives on the controller, we can use that draw event to actually draw our lives. So it's a little bit strange, but you just got to make sure on your controller, even though it doesn't have a sprite, that this is checked to visible. If that's checked invisible, then you're not going to see it. It's not going to call the draw event. There's another rule in GameMaker that you may not be aware of, is that you can only draw things in the draw event. If you try to draw anything outside of the draw event, it just ignores it. So here you go, the draw event. They got some new events here. Draw GUI. Interesting. Well, what that means is that hopefully that gets drawn last. That's the game user interface. Okay, so we might use that. That's kind of interesting. So we would say draw. So in this draw event, what do we want to draw? Well, we want to draw the life pictures, right? So here, let's type in life again. You notice that down here there's some draw functions. You can draw health bars, and you can also draw lives, instance lives. That's the one you want. Make sure you're in the draw event. Again, we're in the draw event of the controller. So here's the controller. We added a draw event. And then we want to draw it. So that's this one. Draw instance lives. What do we want to use as our sprite or life picture? And that's the one we just created. Choose this one, sprite life, not this one. This one here, it doesn't animate. And then where do we want to put it? I would put it up on the top of the screen, say maybe, I don't know, I always like a little bit of border, so maybe 10. And then down the screen, maybe 10. So 10 pixels from the left of the screen, 10 pixels down from the top. Notice it's not relative. This is an absolute position. This is exactly on the screen where we want it. Remember, on the screen, 0, 0 is the top left corner, not the bottom left. And Y is upside down. So that's why you state it this way. Okay. So we've got lives. We're hopefully drawing it. Let's see if it actually draws them. Okay, so here I am. Let's see. Yeah, see, it's drawing my lives up here. See them up here. I'm a little worried about this icon, though, because it looks a lot like one of these, and so the player may get confused and think these are player objects or pop objects, and they're not. They're just for lives. But anyway, it automatically stacks it up for you. You don't have to do anything fancy programming. You kind of get that for free. But one thing you note is when Pop falls outside the room, we don't lose any lives. Okay. So what do we have to do to get it so it loses a life? Yeah. So let's do that part next. How do you lose a life? Well, if we go to Object Pop, it has a outside room event. Remember, we did that a few days ago. So go to Object Pop, and then grab outside room and scooch it over. Another way you can scooch it over is double click on this top of the window. So far what we're doing, we're destroying instance of self, and then we're creating an instance of Object Pop start. So this is probably the point where we want to take away a life. So we do that, let's say set lives, we do that first, let's say. So drag it up here to the top. And we can say -1 for lives. And we say relative. Right? So we're just taking 1 away from lives. So adding -1 to lives is the same as subtracting 1 from lives, which is what we want to do. Okay, so we try it now. But there's an issue. What you'll notice then is when Pop goes outside the room, notice how the number of lives does not change. So we just put in code to say, hey, you're supposed to take one away from lives, but it's not doing that. We still have 3 lives. Does anyone see what the problem is? Well, the problem is the way GameMaker does lives now. It used to be lives was global, right? So you change the lives in the controller object, and it would change the lives everywhere. But that now, in this new version of GameMaker, lives only exists, or the only one that makes any difference is the one on the controller, not the one on pop. We're in the pop object. We're not on the controller object. See that? That's pop. It has its own life variable. Okay? So how do we set the lives over on the controller? This is the key part. You have to go here and say, not on self. I don't want to change the lives for myself because I get destroyed here in a second anyway. It won't matter. I want to change it on the controller. The controller has a live variable or a life variable, and we want to use that one. So make sure to select the controller there. Now you're taking one away from the controller, and the controller is in charge of drawing the lives. So that's where we need to take it away. All right. So let's play it now and see if our lives go away. Okay, so here we lose a life. Oh, we did. Look, we lost one of the lives. There's another one. Hey, I'm doing really bad. I really stink. Okay, so here's my last life, and I get another one. Wait a second. Okay, so I'm losing lives, but I'm not doing anything about it when I get to 0 or get less than 0. How many lives are we going to get? Well, we're saying 4, right? So we'll count next time. But so here where we take away a life, we also have to check to see if we have any lives left. If we don't, then we need to tell them they're a loser, right? And then restart the game. So where do we do that? I would say, this. Let's type in lives again. See this one here? If lives. That's the one we want. If you drag that and put it maybe right here, because we don't want to put up another pop if they have no lives left. So we're trying to say is if lives, well, if lives is, well, having 0 lives is okay, right? Because you know you have those 3 lives and now you're using your last life. You won't have any lives up there on the life pictures up there, but you still have the current life, right? So it's not equal to 0. It's probably less than 0, right? If you have a life of -1, you take one away, and then you realize, oh, it's -1 or something more, then you say, oh man, they have no more lives, they are done. And then you tell them they're a loser. Isn't that terrible? I'm being very sarcastic today. So, yeah, you can do that. All snarky. I've been putting snarky messages in this game for some reason, so we can do that. Let's say if it's less than 0, then we want to, well, see, I want to do the other thing first. I want to do if it's, what's the opposite of less than? Does anybody know? Yeah, that seems obvious, right? But it's not. It's not. Think about it. Okay, so I kind of talked about this last period, but a lot of people think that's the case. But here, let's say the opposite of less than is greater than or equal to. Opposite of greater than is less than or equal to. The opposite of less than or equal to is greater than. The opposite of greater than or equal to is less than. Why is that? Well, if we look at the number line, say we're looking at the number 7 for some reason. So less than would be everything to the left not including 7. Say 7 is what we're comparing to, right? So everything from 7 to the left, but not 7. Well, what's the opposite of that, right? Well, the opposite of that would be everything on this side, including the 7. That's the opposite. You can only have one or the other for an opposite, right? So the opposite of less than is actually greater than or equal to. So if you really want to invert this, you can do it one of two ways, okay? You can say, okay, I'm going to say not less than, okay? So are these the same? Let's ask this question. Is not less than the same as greater than or equal to? Okay, let's try it. Let's try the number 5, let's say. Is 5 not less than 7? It's hard to think of it. Is 5 not less than 7? Well, it is less than 7, so that would be false, right? Or another way you could say, is 5 greater than or equal to 7? And the answer is, well, no, it's not. So not less than and greater than or equal to are exactly the same thing, okay? Very strange. But most people don't think this way. They don't think not less than. They think more like this, okay? You're kind of used to this more in math class. So you could do it either way. You could actually just say not here and then do this based on saying not less. But again, that's confusing for most people. So maybe the way you do this is you say this instead. We know the opposite of less than is greater than or equal to, so we use that. If you have lives that are greater than or equal to 0, then that's when you want to create the pop start, because you have more lives, right? You haven't lost all your lives yet. It's greater than or equal to 0. Remember, having 0 lives is okay because you still have that last life. So that works. But what happens in the case when the number of lives, you've subtracted 1 from lives and the number of lives is now less than 0? It's not greater than or equal to 0. What do? Well, you lose, basically. Basically, you've lost. You've lost all your lives. You didn't make it to the last level. You're done. And so you have to tell the user that. So here then we would say else. Remember that else thing? Else is what you use to say otherwise in programming. So if this is true, do this. Otherwise, do that. So else means otherwise. Okay. So when this comes out to be false, when the number of lives is not greater than or equal to, or another way to say that is when the number of lives is less than 0, then what do you want to do? Well, you want to tell them they're a loser. So how do you do that? Well, remember, we're kind of breaking the rules here, but we're using an execute code block. Now, if you read the documentation about GameMaker, they say, don't do this because this code is going away, or this only works on Windows, okay? But they don't give us an alternative. So you're kind of forced into this unless you're going to make your own, and I don't have time for that. So we're going to say show underscore message. This little pops up a little dialog box, and then you can say something snarky. What would I say? I would say this. I should be a bus driver since I just took you to school. Okay, so that's what I say. That's my standard line when I beat a student at some kind of game. I say, I should be a bus driver since I just took you to school. What do you think? Is it a good tagline? No? Okay, you can come up with something snarky as well. You could say, you're a loser, or something like that. Now, maybe be nice and say, oh, you've lost. Okay. Here at the end, make sure to put a closing parenthesis and a semicolon, though. And close off that string with a double quote, or otherwise it'll crash there. So tell them they are a loser somehow, okay? But then, what do you do after that? You told them they're a loser. They click on the button to get rid of the window. What should happen next? Probably restart the game, right? So let's do that. Oops, wrong one. There it is. Okay, so make sure not to say restart room. We sometimes do that. Don't do this one. Do this one. Restart game. And you want to put it after this code block. So drag this there on the bottom of that code block. See where it's at? You can also resize this code block. It's huge, so I kind of resize it just so that you can see it. But oh, that's so hard there. Okay. So in the case where they don't have any more lives, then it's going to put up a snarky message and then restart the game. And zooming in again, just restarting. Okay. Okay, so let's try this and see if we actually see the snarky message. I like that word, snarky, for some reason. It's a cool word. Okay, so I lose a life. That's one. Here's my second life, lost. Here's my third life, lost. Here's my fourth life. And it didn't work. Wait a second. We lost our lives, but it didn't give us our snarky message. What did I do? Anybody know? Well, the problem is the same problem here. When we set lives, well, you can say not, but no, we did invert it. We just changed the conditional to not less than is the same as greater than or equal to. I think we figured that out. But remember what we had to do here? We're changing lives in the controller, okay? That means if we're testing lives, we also have to test the lives not here in pop, but in the controller, okay? It's the controller's lives that makes difference, not here. Because the controller's drawing its life images. It would be a bad idea to use the life variable in pop because pop gets destroyed all the time. Okay, so let's try it again. Make sure both of those are set to object controller. Okay, so I lost a life, lost another life. Oh, I'll show you that too. Oh, okay, and it restarts the game, right? And puts up the snarky message, and then you're back because you're in the last room. Okay? Yeah, question. Or not going down? Okay, so again, to double check your lives, you've got to make sure that when you take one away, it's the controller that controls the lives. So make sure you choose controller here. Did you do that? Yeah, so here in set lives, this little arrow thing, make sure to choose the object controller there. Yeah. And then you also have to do that here too, if lives. Controller is keeping track of lives, not pop. So you have to tell GameMaker which object in the game is keeping track of lives. It's no longer global, okay? And now it's up to and so at this point you should start feeling pretty confident that you've got lives figured out, right? We're done. And the answer is no, we're not. It looks like it's working. It works fine if you only have one room. But if you have two rooms, you have a problem. Let's try that. We're going to make another room. Okay, let's do that. Let's make another room. Now the best way to make a room, well, one of the ways you can make a room is just duplicate the room you have and make it look a little different. Okay, so we're going to duplicate this room. That way you don't have to do the background and set all the things up. You can just say duplicate. So your first room becomes kind of like a template room. Now in this new room, we'll call it room 2 or room 1. In this new room, we want to make it look different. So I'm going to maybe get rid of these things. I'm just holding down the shift key while I'm dragging. And then I'll move some these around, I don't know. Okay, just make it look a little different so we know when we go from room to room. Now notice in this room we have, where's our controller? Here, see, there's my controller. That little question mark, that's your controller. All right, so I'm going to now go from one room to the next. Now we haven't tested this, right? Because if you remember, when all the squids are gone, so we have this controller thing, and every step, every frame, it counts up the number of squid things. It says, okay, count up the number of big legs. If the number is less than or equal to 0 and it's not the last room, then go to the next room. If it is the last room, tell them that they're not a loser, I guess, and then restart the game. Okay? So that's what we're doing when you go from room to room. So this should still work, right? So let's try that. Let's try that and see if it does that. Oh, not that again. Okay, so I lose a life, but I'm trying to get to the next room, so I'm going to have to play the game first. Ooh, that was close. Oh, man. This game is getting harder. Okay. Ooh. Oh, so close. There we go. Okay, I got the, oh, wait. Oh, no, look, I have 3 lives again. Now I have 2. I got that life back by going to the next room. That's bad, okay? So when I went to the next room, for some reason, I got my lives back. They got reset. That's a problem. Okay. So even though we're keeping track of lives, we have this problem. And why did we get our lives back? The answer for that is because, well, the controller got destroyed when the previous room closed, and then got recreated in the second room. And when it got recreated in the second room, if you look at the controller object, which one is that? Here. If you look at the controller object and you look at the create event, notice the first thing we do is we set lives to 3. Okay? So we have a problem. How do we keep track of lives if we don't have that global variable? If you go out and look at the global variable, let's say. So we'll go out to the manual and we'll look up in the index, say lives. Lives global there. It says this. The variable is global, lives. The variable is global in scope and is used to hold a numeric value that usually used for the player's lives. This variable is only designed to support legacy projects that were previous versions of GameMaker and should not be used in new projects as it may be deprecated in the future. Ooh, what does that mean? Deprecated. That's a funny word. They use it a lot in computer science. What does it mean? Well, for example, in English you would say if someone's self-deprecating, I'm kind of that way. Somebody says, hey, Dan, you play the guitar really well. And I go, no, I need to practice more. I'm terrible, in fact. Someone who's self-deprecating kind of puts themselves down. They don't like taking compliments, let's say. So that's what deprecation means. It's to lower oneself. In this case, in computer science, what this means is it's still there, yes, but it's going to go away in a previous version or in a subsequent version of GameMaker. Don't write new stuff that uses the lives variable because this variable is going away in the next version. Okay? So if you're writing new stuff, which we are, you you don't want to use lives because when the next version of GameMaker comes out, now your program doesn't work. And you're going to have to figure this out anyway, just at a future date. So it's not to be used on new projects. Global variables are bad. Remember I mentioned that at the beginning. Global variables are terrible. Okay. So GameMaker had all these global variables in it, and they decided, okay, they were getting a lot of guff from a lot of good programmers saying, you should be using global variables. So they got rid of this, or they deprecated it at least. Okay. So if you see that word deprecated on any code that you're writing, don't use it. It's bad. Okay. You also have to be careful how you say deprecated. It sounds a lot like another word, but I won't say it. Okay. All right, so we know lives is bad. We can't use this global variable. It's been deprecated. So what do we do? Because we have this controller over here, and then when it gets recreated in the second room, it resets itself. So what we need is a way for our controller to last or to persist from room to room. Right now we don't have a way to do that. But there is a way to do that, I think, in GameMaker. First thing I'd like you to do is here in room 1, right, we've got our controllers right here. What I'm going to say is in the second room, make sure you're in the second room, nuke that controller. We're going to get rid of it. So at this point you're asking yourself, well, if we get rid of the controller, what happens? The game won't have a controller when we get to the second room. Let's see what the game does without that controller. It probably should just, it probably just kind of chunks. I'm going to try to get to the second room here. If I can actually play this game. My wife gets mad at me for playing video games, and I tell her, I'm just doing research for my class. She's okay. And then here, I lose a life. Oh, and I crash. Okay. So why did I crash? Well, there's no controller. You went to the controller to set lives. The controller's not there, and it chunks. Okay. Okay. So how do we make the controller in the first room somehow make it into the second room? And the way you do that is you go to your controller here. This is real easy, and click on this checkbox. Now this is super important. In Spanish that's mucho importante, which is really bad Spanish. It's supposed to be muy importante. But I pretend to speak bad Spanish when I'm in Mexico especially, and people just go, oh, I can't believe he speaks Spanish that poorly. I actually speak okay in Spanish. But you want to make this persistent, right? So that means at the end of the room, this object is not going to go away. It's going to stay there, okay? Right? And since it's going to stay there, it should remember how many lives it has. So let's try that and see if that works. So remember, you take the controller out of the second room and only put it in the first room, and then turn on persistence. Oh, darn. Oh. Oh. I'm trying to get to the next level, but I'm not playing very well. Hang on. Yay. Okay. So look, here's my lives. Oh. So take a look. You can't tell, but what should have happened is that is what happens is the lights actually do draw up here in the top left corner, but the problem is the walls get written over the top of it. So let me see if I can speed this up a bit. I've got too many layers of walls here. But, yeah, next room one. Yeah, let's make that power up. That would be a good idea. Okay, so where do we put that power up? Probably on the controller. I'm just making a next room cheat. Remember, we want to do a key down event. Well, key press event. Key press, and we want to use the letter N for next. We're going to have to put these cheats in anyway, so we might as well do it now. It just makes it easier to make games and stuff, or to test them. What do we want to do? Well, remember, we can't just go to the next room. We have to make sure that there's one there. So if the room is the last room, so grab that one. If the room is the last room, this is when they do a key down event on the N key. If it's not the last room, so make sure to click on not. If this is not the last room, well, then that means there is a next room. So drag this, go to the next room to the right of that. And that will allow us to go to the next room. So let's try that. And what I want to show you is, say, I'm going to lose a life here, so you can see me lose one. I guess I always lose one here. Lose a life, but then I go on to the next room. Notice how my life pictures are covered up. See? And the reason why they're covered up is because the controller was there before everything else was, and it gets drawn pretty much last. Or first, actually, because it was there before everything else, and that doesn't work. Okay. So we fixed the problem with lives. That's a good thing. But the bad thing is now our life pictures are messed up. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I saw this in the draw event. If we go to the draw event of the controller, here's the draw event. If you go to the draw event of the controller, you see that here it's drawing these instances, but there was a command we could use. See this one here? It says, if we type in draw, actually, draw, there's one that was called draw GUI. Remember that one? Oh no, it was an event. It's not there. It's not an action. It's actually an event. See, when we were in this draw event, I made this draw event, I said draw. I saw this one. See that one? Draw GUI. So I'm thinking that since it's the GUI, what's GUI stand for? Anybody know? It'd be graphic user interface. You think it meant game, but no, it means graphic user interface. It's basically how the user controls the game. Typically, when you have a game, you want those controls to be drawn last on your desktop. So it sounds like they have an event for that. So instead of using the draw event, my suggestion here is maybe let's do a change. Right-click on draw and say change event. Of course, I haven't tried this, so I don't know if this is going to work, but we can try it. And here we're going to say draw GUI. Okay. It's funny, that word GUI. And our hope is that the GUI gets drawn after everything else. I'm trying to avoid having to create a new layer here. So let's see if we can do that. Draw GUI. I have no idea what draw GUI does, other than it draws GUIs. Okay, so that looked like it worked, at least on this first level. Now if I go to the next level, hey, it worked. Check it out. The stars are being drawn on top of everything else. So usually on your graphic user interface, all your controls and things, you want those to be drawn after everything else is drawn. And it looks like it does that. Ooh, that was weird. Okay? So I think, yeah, question. Your lives aren't working? Okay, well, what you have to do is think about your personality and what you enjoy, and then maybe your life will work out someday. Oh, you're talking about the game. I'm sorry. Okay, so there's the game. My life is not working either, but that's just me. Sorry, I shouldn't do that to students. That's mean. Okay, so yeah, I'll come in and help. So we've got lives figured out. Hey, check it out. What's cool about lives is now we've got score figured out too. Okay, now that we have this object that can persist from room to room, we can keep track of the score as well. Where do we keep track of the score? We keep track of the score in the controller. And if we had a health bar for some kind of boss monster or something, or maybe we have a health bar, that health variable can persist now from room to room. So we solved a lot of problems today. We got our lives working, at least in the game. Personally, mine's still a mess, but at least in the game we got lives working. And then next time we'll take a look at maybe doing scoring. Maybe add some more blocks. But that's probably enough for today. So we'll stop here. And then I'll come around and answer questions. Let me stop my recording. Hopefully my recording's still going. No, not that. Recording, where are you? There you are.